Okay, so you're trying to get up to speed fast, right? Cut through all the noise and figure out what's actually happening.
Yeah, that's what we do here, the deep dive.
Exactly. We've gone through a ton of stuff, news articles, official docs, even what people are saying online, all about this huge shakeup in the U.S. Army.
We've looked at lawfare, breaking defense, defense scoop, stars and stripes, Army News Service, global upfront newspapers, plus forum chatter on Democratic Underground, Reddit.
And the official stuff, too, that letter to the force about the transformation initiative.
Yep, that and a briefing document. We've tried to pull it all together.
So the mission for this deep dive, get to the heart of Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth's big comprehensive transformation for the Army.
It's a major shift.
Huge. And we really need to understand what's going on with the Judge Advocate General Corps, the JAGs, because that's raising some eyebrows.
Definitely a related point of concern.
All right, let's jump in. Hegseth announced this Army Transformation Initiative, ATI, April 30th, 2025. What's the big idea?
The main thrust is creating a leaner, more lethal force. That's the language they're using.
Framed under peace through strength.
Exactly. It's not just tinkering around the edges. It's presented as a fundamental rethink.
And the speed feels fast. Heavy focus on homeland defense and, well, deterring China in the Indo-Pacific.
Right.
With deadlines like 2026, 2027 for a lot of it. Why so quick?
Well, the sources we looked at suggest it's tied directly to how fast they think China's military is advancing. There's a real sense of urgency.
Okay, makes sense. That letter to the force mentioned 3 main tracks.
Yeah.
Get critical warfighting capabilities out there, optimize the force structure, and cut waste.
Yep, those are the pillars.
Let's start with the capabilities. What kind of critical warfighting capabilities are we talking about?
It's heavily weighted towards future tech, big investments in long-range precision fires.
Right.
Layered air and missile defense. They're calling it the Golden Dome for America.
Catchy name?
Plus
Yeah.
cyber, electronic warfare, even counterspace stuff.
Golden Dome.
Okay.
But what does that mean specifically? Like, what are the targets?
So one goal is fielding long-range missiles that can hit moving targets land and sea by 2027. That includes new versions of the Precision Strike Missile, PRSM.
Extending their reach, basically.
And accuracy, yeah. Then there's this idea of achieving electromagnetic and air littoral dominance, also by 2027.
Okay, translate that. Electromagnetic and air littoral dominance.
Think controlling the invisible battlefield, the signals, the spectrum, and also owning the air and the coastlines, denying the enemy space to operate.
Got it. And to do that, they're pushing unmanned systems, UMS, drones essentially, and other remote weapons into every division by the end of 2027.
Yeah, a huge increase in unmanned stuff, ground and air-launched effects, integrated right down into the divisions.
So drones are clearly a massive focus.
Absolutely, and countering them too. They want counter-UAS, anti-drone tech to be more mobile, cheaper, and integrated right down to the platoon level by 26, company by 27.
Which suggests they expect drones everywhere on future battlefields.
It really does. It's seen as a critical threat, so getting defenses down to the small units is key.
And then there's the AI angle. AI-driven command and control for HQ's Theater Core Division by 2027. How big a change is that?
Potentially huge. The idea is AI sorts through massive data, spots patterns, gives commanders options faster, a decision-making edge.
But it's not all just high-level tech, right? They're also talking about advanced manufacturing, like 3D printing, out in operational units by 2026.
Yeah, imagine being able to print spare parts right near the front line.
Huge logistical difference.
Could drastically cut reliance on long supply chains. More self-sufficiency.
And maybe more traditionally, they're boosting the industrial base to make more ammo by 2028. So basics still matter.
Absolutely. You need the bullets to go with the high-tech systems. Sustained operations require stockpiles.
It's interesting, though, they are continuing some big programs. The M1E3 tank upgrade, the Future Long-Range Assault Aircraft, FLRAA.
Right, so it's not throwing everything out. It suggests they're being selective, modernizing key platforms while pushing hard on the new stuff.
We also saw this term transformation in contact. TIC. What's that about?
TIC, that started back in early 2024. It's basically the foundation for this. It's about getting new tech into soldiers' hands faster. Experiment, adapt quickly.
So less waiting years for a perfect system, more iteration.
Exactly. And they're talking about agile funding to make that happen, moving away from rigid, slow budget processes.
More flexibility to pivot quickly.
That seems to be the goal.
Okay, so that's the tech and capability side. What about Pillar 2? Optimizing the force structure? Sounds like org chart changes.
Oh yeah, big ones. Army aviation is getting restructured. They're cutting one aerial cavalry squadron from each active combat aviation brigade.
Fewer scout helicopters.
Seems like it, and consolidating aviation maintenance, too.
And all infantry brigade combat teams are becoming mobile brigade combat teams. That's a fundamental change.
The goal is speed, maneuverability, more punch, rethinking the standard infantry unit for faster deployment, more decisive action.
But the really big shakeups seem to be higher up, merging major commands.
Right. Army Futures Command, the future tech guys, merging with Training and Doctrine Command, TRADOS, trying to link development and training more closely.
Makes sense on paper. And Forces Command becomes Western Hemisphere Command.
Yeah, absorbing Army North and Army South. That signals a much stronger focus on homeland defense and the Americas.
A definite shift in geographic priority there.
And also consolidation within Army Materiel Command logistics, sustainment, munitions. Streamlining the support side.
Trying to get more efficient.
That's the stated aim. Cut redundancies, make logistics more responsive.
And it's not just commands. They're cutting about 1,000 staff jobs at HQDA, Army Headquarters.
And reducing the number of generals.
Trying to flatten the hierarchy. Less bureaucracy.
Seems like it. Reduce overhead, push resources out to the units, and modernization.
And this all ties into that strategic realignment you mentioned, focusing forces on homeland defense and the Indo-Pacific.
Yes, more presence in the Indo-Pacific, expanded prepositioned gear, more rotational troops, bigger exercises with allies.
And maybe moving away from storing equipment on ships to putting it on land in the region.
That was mentioned, yeah. Might be seen as more secure, less vulnerable than floating stocks.
Interesting. And finally, on the structure side, changes to civilian hiring and firing, focusing on merit.
Seems like a push for a more performance-based civilian workforce, aligned with the overall goal of improving effectiveness.
Okay. Capabilities, structure. Now the third pillar, cutting waste and obsolete programs, where the budget axe falls.
Always a contentious area. The focus is stopping procurement of outdated systems and killing programs that aren't working out or don't fit the future plan.
And they name names. No more new Humvees or JLTVs being bought.
Pretty standard vehicles, yeah. Procurement stop.
But also the M10 Booker light tank. That's relatively new.
That one is surprising. Halting a program just recently fielded suggests a pretty sharp reevaluation of its role versus other priorities.
And stopping buys of the AH-64D Apache variant and the Gray Eagle drone.
Again, signals a move towards newer tech. The AH-64D is an older model, and while Gray Eagle's been useful, newer drones likely offer more now.
The letter mentioned canceling programs that are dated, late to need, overpriced, or difficult to maintain.
Pretty clear criteria. Sets a standard for evaluating everything.
They're also cutting spending on maintaining older systems, what they call unnecessary climate-related initiatives.
Plus, trimming wasteful contracts and travel budgets. It looks like a broad cost-cutting effort.
Built tightening to fund the new stuff.
That's the logic. Every dollar saved theoretically goes towards those modernization priorities.
And even reforming contracting. Performance-based deals, right to repair. That last one sounds interesting.
Yeah, right to repair could mean the Army does more of its own maintenance, relies less on contractors, maybe saves money long-term, and gets the technical data they need.
Okay, so that's the Army transformation piece. Big picture stuff. But there's this whole other issue bubbling up around the JAG Corps.
Yes. While connected through Hegseth, it's generated a very distinct set of concerns. Very serious ones.
Started with the firing of the top JAGs for the Air Force and the Army back in February 25. Unprecedented.
Highly unusual. Hegseth reportedly called them not well-suited potential roadblocks.
Which immediately rings alarm bells about independence, right?
Absolutely. These are supposed to be the top impartial legal advisors. Removing them like that without clear misconduct sets a worrying precedent about political influence.
Especially given Hegseth's history. The sources brought up his use of the term jagoffs for military lawyers.
And calling the Geneva Conventions outdated and too restrictive?
Not exactly confidence-inspiring language regarding respect for military law.
It paints a picture of seeing legal constraints as annoyances rather than essential principles.
And then, his personal lawyer, Timothy Parlator, gets commissioned as a Navy JAG reservist.
Reportedly tasked with overseeing a sweeping overhaul of the JAG Corps itself.
The optics there are not great. Conflict of interest concerns, undue influence.
It certainly raises those questions. And the reported goal of this overhaul is what's really concerning people.
Which is?
To push for, let's say, more expansive legal interpretations, ones that might favor certain battlefield tactics more, maybe be more lenient towards troops accused of war crimes.
That sounds like fundamentally changing what military lawyers are supposed to do.
Exactly. As the sources emphasize, JAGs are meant to be nonpartisan. Independent advice on domestic law, international law, the law of war, objective counsel.
They're the ones who advise on minimizing civilian harm, preventing unnecessary suffering, protecting POWs, the necessary checks.
They are the roadblocks to illegal actions in that sense. That's their job. Their independence is crucial for upholding the rule of law.
So the fear is Hegseth's actions could gut that independence, lead to politically driven legal advice, maybe even, as some sources hinted, bad faith interpretations.
That's the core worry. If JAGs feel pressured to give the right answer instead of the legally correct one, it could lead to violations of law, damage the military's legitimacy.
Serious consequences.
So potentially very serious. And just firing the top JAGs could have a chilling effect down the ranks.
Yeah. Who's going to stick their neck out and say, "Sir, that's illegal," if they see the top lawyers getting sacked for being roadblocks?
It could definitely discourage independent, principled legal advice throughout the DoD, a major concern for the integrity of the system.
So how are people reacting to all this? The Army changes specifically. Seems mixed.
Yeah, some see the transformation as bold, necessary, maybe even overdue, given the threat timelines.
Getting the Army ready for future fights, focusing on China, embracing tech.
That's the argument, a vital modernization effort.
But then you look online, forums and such, and there's a lot of pushback. Skepticism.
Definitely. People questioning cutting legacy stuff like tanks and trucks. Are we losing essential conventional capabilities?
Worries about forgetting lessons from past wars where that legacy gear proved vital.
Right. Is the new tech proven enough, fielded enough to replace it yet? And concerns about focusing too much on lethality and maybe not enough on logistics.
Someone online basically said, cool weapons are useless if you can't get them fuel and ammo.
A classic military truism. You need the support tail. Overlooking logistics can cripple even the most advanced force.
The command mergers are also getting side-eye. Consolidating commands, cutting generals, especially the homeland defense aspect.
The worry there is if you merge Army North and South into this big Western Hemisphere command focused partly on the Indo-Pacific, does homeland defense lose focus, lose dedicated expertise?
Could resources get stretched too thin?
That's the question being asked. And Hegseth's own background comes up.
His lack of sort of very senior, high-level command experience.
Yeah, some critics online question if he has the deep strategic or operational background needed for such a massive overhaul. Are decisions driven more by politics?
Which leads to the inevitable speculation.
About political motivations, yeah. And whether specific defense contractors stand to gain more than others from these specific choices.
Standard questions whenever billions in defense dollars shift around.
Always part of the conversation. Though it's worth noting there is a legal framework, Title 10 of the U.S. Code, meant to protect JAGI independence.
But the question is, will that be enough given the current pressures?
That remains to be seen. Laws need committed people to uphold them.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. What are the big takeaways? We've got this sweeping Army transformation underway. Fast-paced, tech-focused, aimed at future threats.
Driven by Secretary Hegseth, aiming for that leaner, more lethal force, prioritizing China and homeland defense.
But running parallel are these really significant worries about the JAG Corps, the firings, the rhetoric, the potential overhaul, raising fundamental questions about independent legal advice in the military.
It could really change how the U.S. military operates, its effectiveness, and crucially, how it sticks to legal and ethical rules.
Which leave you, the listener, with a pretty big thought to chew on. What happens in the long run when you push for rapid transformation, embrace all this new tech, but potentially weaken the independent legal guardrails within the military?
Where's that balance between lethality and legality in modern war? It's something critical to watch.
Absolutely. We definitely encourage you to dig into the sources yourselves, keep following these developments. There's a lot at stake.